Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to announce tonight our presentations for our distinguished artists. This is a program that connects school district artists, so students in our middle school and high school, with local organizations who have leased these students' artwork that will be displayed in their organization for the next year. So the students created their artwork and then offered it up to be leased. These organizations came to our district art show and selected the art they wanted to have hanging in their establishment for the next year, and then paid a fee to the artist for both the framing, the matting, the plaque, but also for a small artist's fee that the artist will take home with them tonight. So for some of these artists, this may be their first paid piece of artwork, first of many, we hope. But we're very excited to introduce our artists, our organizations, and present our artwork tonight. So here's how this is gonna work. Artists, I'm going to call your name. You're going to come forward and grab your piece of artwork. I'm going to say what the artwork's name is. You can display it for the room proudly. And then I'll have the organization come up and get their artwork from you. Sound good? All right, we're going to start with Alex Shimankevich. Right here. Alex has two pieces of artwork that are being leased tonight. The first is Lasagna. And this will be leased by the East Troy Tax Service, who today is represented by Dawn Cloth. Dawn, if you want to come on up. Alex's second piece of artwork is called Promontory? And this is going to be leased by Quality Custom Framing, who's represented by Sue Budzin. Sue also did all of the framing for every piece of artwork. I'm very proud to present Alex with her check for leasing her artwork. Thank you, Alex. You can go shake hands with Dr. Hibner over there. Next is Isabel Williams. Isabel also has two pieces of artwork, and these are two actual pieces that connect together. We'll start with this one closest to me. So one piece, Elephant Trunk, is being leased by The Heritage, which is represented by Sarah Helbezma. Yep. And the second piece, it's a little bit over there, is also Elephant Trunk. These two pieces go together, and it's being leased by the East Troy Community School District, represented by Dr. Hibner. And I get to present Isabel with her check. Thank you. Next, we have Claire Smith. Claire has one piece that she's leasing tonight called Frog in the Fog. And this is being leased by the East Troy Community School District. So you can present that to Dr. Hibner. Here's your check. Our next piece, also going to the East Troy Community School District, is by Riley Urbaniak. She's not able to be with us today, but it's called Pumpkin Patch. Next is Ren Smith. Ren is leasing one piece of artwork tonight called Mountain Sunset, and it's being leased to First Citizen State Bank, represented by Jennifer Bauer. I'll grab her plaque. Oh. Thanks, Ren. Next is Abigail Bowden. Abigail is leasing one piece of artwork tonight called Rainbow Starry Night. And this is being leased to East Troy Pharmacy, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight, but they'll be collecting their artwork shortly. Next is Delaney Griffith. Delaney is leasing her artwork called Curiosity. And she's leasing this to Koskinen Eye Clinic, who's represented by Jerry Koskinen. We have two other artists who are leasing their artwork who are not able to join us. Madeline May Daly is leasing her art piece, The Ripening, to JP Tech. Oh, I'm so sorry. Madison May Daly, come forward. So Madeline is leasing her artwork, The Ripening, to JP Tech, who does not have a representative with us. So they will be picking up their artwork shortly. Sorry about that, Madeline. And then Avery Seebeck has leased Koi Fish in a Pond to the East Troy High School National Art Honor Society, who's represented by Marie Giardini. We want to thank all of our sponsors for supporting the arts here at East Troy, and we want to congratulate all of our artists. So let's give them one final round of applause. Yes, if you can, sponsors with the artwork and artists, if we can go out to the hallway, we'll take a picture. Thank you everyone for joining. And art teachers too, please.
right, we'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's approved. And we have the minutes of the April 22nd meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion, changes? Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Public participation. Is there anybody that would like to speak tonight? Yep. If you'd step up to the mic.
Is it on? Okay. Trudy Schultz, W2532 Addo Court, East Troy. In regards to School Board Policy 361.1, selection of library instructional materials and changes being proposed. Proposed change is books would not be removed during the review process. The proposed change should include books would be removed during the review process when the requester identifies specific language used that is not age appropriate. 2, staff would not be required to read the complete book. They would only review the pages and/or sections referenced by requester. The proposed change should include staff should be required to read the book when the requester identifies language within the book that is not age appropriate. And regarding exhibit number 2, request for reconsideration of instructional materials, question number 7 states, are you aware of the judgment of this material by professional critics? My question to this board is a professional critic's opinion more important than a parent's opinion? Question number 10 states, are you aware of statutes which require schools to have available materials displaying the pluralistic nature of our society in order to receive state aids? My question to this board is, are state aids more important than a parent's beliefs of what they want available to their child? These 2 questions are biased and should not require an answer. Unfortunately, when a policy is implemented or there is a policy change, it is not in favor of parents. In fact, it is the exact opposite, by making it most difficult for parents who want to opt their child out. I hope this board will make the right decision by respecting parents' involvement in their child's education and not making it more challenging. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trudy. Jean, you want to speak?
Hi, good evening. My name is Gene Resmarinuski, East Troy resident, fellow board members, staff, audience. I'm over here to talk about the packets that I brought up before for when we have an agenda meeting like this, we should have packets, and I'm going to keep harping on that until we get them. So maybe we ought to look into doing that. The last time I heard excuses why it couldn't be done by the administration, a lot of extra work. We got plenty of time to do referendum stuff, plenty of time to do PSI, all that kind of things. Why can't we do packets for the citizens? Burlington, Elkhorn do it. And if you want to get a good example, if you don't find theirs, go look at the village of East Troy. Everything that they're discussing is in a packet, so everybody can see it. Is there a reason why we don't want to have packets? Is there something we're trying to hide, especially something in the area of the financial things? I think I know we're talking about some of this stuff shouldn't be shared with the public. Why don't we take the one that you all sign into now and have the packet for the board and everybody else, exact same packet. Then create a separate packet for closed session things, because those are the only things that are private information that you don't share with the public. Seems pretty simple to me. The public wants this, especially me, and we're gonna get it, so I just say, who's in charge here? The administration, Chris and the administration, or the board? You simply tell Chris you want those packets put together, and I will be done. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Gene. Anybody else like to speak? Okay. We'll move on to the financial report.
I move the approval of April 2024 payments in the amount of $2,058,183.11 and receipts in the amount of $743,732.18 as reflected on the financial statements.
Okay, discussion, questions? Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion action items. First one is staffing resignations.
I don't believe we have any. Am I correct on that? So I think we can just go right into staffing recommendations.
Okay, next item, staffing recommendations.
Hello, I will go first. I have 3 for you, and they are all second grade teachers. So if you are wondering, Lindsay, I don't recall you bringing a second grade teacher resignation or retirement to the board prior to now. You're right. So I will tell you a little story about why we have 3 second grade teacher hiring recommendations, and it all has to do with internal shuffling about. So you recall hearing about the retirement of Sandy Cracklow. So Becky Laddick, current second grade teacher, is going to stick with the bulk of her class and loop up to 3rd grade. So that creates one of the second grade openings. We've also talked about reading intervention at the board level. So we had an open reading interventionist position. Lori Fitch, current second grade teacher, applied and interviewed for that position. She is going to shift into reading intervention. That's the second grade opening. And then we've also talked pretty extensively about special education needs. We added a special education teacher position at Little Prairie. Katie Jeske, current second grade teacher, sought interest in that position. She is shifting into special education. So change in the air in second grade. So that is where 3 open second grade positions comes from. And so we posted on April 22nd and left the posting open for a couple of weeks, received 38 applications. And so we engaged in a bit of a screening process, quite a number of newer teachers. And so the screening process was helpful in providing us some more information about their applications. So 22 of those candidates were asked to provide video responses to 3 questions that were sent to them. And so Amy Fospanchik and I reviewed all the applications initially and then reviewed the video responses to help us get down to 7 in-person interviews. So myself and Amy, as well as Carrie Rausch, second grade teacher, and Michelle Gwinnett, second grade special education teacher, were on that interview team and talked to those 7 candidates, asked a series of questions. And so we're able then, from that process, to select 3 candidates. So you have, while it was one process, you have 3 separate hiring synopses in front of you. So the first one that I will talk about is Kayla Booth. Oh, sorry. I'm thrown off because the first bullet, I apologize, the first bullet on Kayla's synopsis is not correct. So sorry, just missed deleting something as I was creating these three. So Kayla is not an East Troy graduate, though we do have one coming up in this file who is. Kayla graduated from, oh gosh, you guys, I made mistakes on here. I'm so sorry. I was doing all three of these. Okay, Kayla is,
West Osha Central.
I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, the dates just on here aren't correct. I'm sorry. So Kayla is a Whitewater graduate. She most recently has been, oh, I'm sorry, I have to fix this, you guys. She most recently has been at Lakewood Elementary School in Twin Lakes School District. So she has been teaching first grade there for 3 years. And so she, let's see if I managed to update the descriptions that her references said, or if I goofed that up too. Yeah, her references described her as, that's what happens when you try to hire 3 of the same position at one time. Okay. Her references described her as super strong, super organized. Kids love her. And now I'm going off. Gosh, I'm really sorry. Great. Perfect. Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. It is. It is. Yeah, I didn't get that wrong. Okay. Anyways, very strong references. I talked to a former administrator who said, like, she's just got it. You know, when she met her as a new teacher, she just kind of had the it factor, and so spoke really highly of her. Okay, next one. So let's talk about Emily Wendt is next. So Emily is a fun story. One, she makes me feel awfully old, but Emily was an elementary student when I first started in the district as a counselor. So it's fun to hire someone as a licensed staff member that I worked with when she was an elementary student. But Emily, also super strong recommendations. So she is a new teacher. She's coming out of student teaching, and she has been she's been doing her student teaching in New Berlin, so she's just finishing here this spring. But her cooperating teacher said she's the strongest student teacher that she's ever had. She also described her as being the whole package, having strong management, and being focused on relationships. It was additionally noted that she's really organized and always prepared. Okay, and then the third one is Bree Parent. So Bree graduated from Stevens Point, also has a master's degree from Stevens Point. She has 5 years of classroom experience in kindergarten, first and second grades, in both the Wausau and the Mount Horeb area school districts. So Bree also most recently is just finishing up a reading intervention position in Mugwanago. So that's what she's been doing this school year. Her references described her as professional, thirsty for knowledge, willing to do what it takes. Also stated that kids really love her and her current school will be sad to see her go. So I bring for your approval those 3. Pardon my, I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of Emily Wendt, Bree Parent, and Kayla Booth as second grade teachers. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Ones with experience to jump into.
All right, good evening. I bring 2 recommendations to you. The first one is for our middle school agriculture teacher. We received a total of 4 applications, reviewed all 4, ended up interviewing 3 of the candidates. One did cancel an interview before it happened. So myself and Taylor Baumeister reviewed applications. Again, 4 candidates were selected for interviews. The team consisted of myself, Taylor Baumeister, Katie Vacula, high school teacher, and Brian Schaefer, middle school teacher. After reviewing the candidate applications, 4 candidates were offered interviews, 1's canceled prior to the scheduled interview. Answered questions covering professional background, knowledge of best practices, and district goals and initiatives. After reviewing their responses, the team chose their top candidate. Background checks were completed, reference checks were conducted as well, and Melissa Conkle was offered the position and accepted on May 6, 2024. A little bit about Melissa. She is a recent graduate from UW-Madison with a BS in dairy science. She is a former Wisconsin State FFA officer, very passionate about agriculture. Mother was an agriculture teacher, I believe still is an agriculture teacher. So really is in her genes there, in blood. Her professors had very high things to say about her. One of the top students in their class would go above and beyond. So we're really excited to bring on Melissa in that role. The second recommendation is for the high school and middle school Spanish teaching position. Again, 5 applications were received for that position. We ended up interviewing 2 of those candidates. The team was myself, Aaron Judd, high school AP, Taylor Baumeister, teaching and learning, Tori Franz, Spanish teacher, and Kelly Geisert, also Spanish teacher at the high school. After conducting those 2 interviews, we did offer the position to Elise Gomez. She is also a recent graduate from Whitewater, just in this May, the degree in Spanish and ESL. Her professor described her as personable, creative, and eager to learn. Very hard worker, and someone that wants to ask a lot of questions and just get better at what she's doing. Her cooperating teacher, she's currently in Muskego School District, finishing out her student teaching. Stated her strengths are passionate and someone who builds great relationships with her students, which we know we need at the middle school. Very creative in her approach to teaching, and her students loved having her as a teacher. So we're also very excited to offer Elise Gomez that position.
Make a motion to approve the hiring of Melissa Conkle for the middle school agriculture teacher and Elise Gomez for the high school, middle school Spanish teacher.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'm really excited to fill these spots,
We are
offer
too.
more classes.
We are too.
It's great.
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mine's just informational, not one that needs to be voted on. We had an opening for the head varsity boys basketball coaching position. Coach Tice resigned at the end of this season, and so we opened it up on weekend, had 8 applicants, interviewed 2 people. The interview team consisted of myself, Stacy Keene, Aaron Judd, and a community member as well. It was unanimous in the 2 people we interviewed that we welcome Noah Phillips as our new boys varsity head coach. Past 2 seasons, Noah has been part of our basketball program as the assistant coach to Braden Tice. Noah has previous high school coaching experience at New Berlin West and also currently as a boys coach for 24 Up, an AAU program sponsored by the Pat Connington Foundation. Noah is a longtime East Troy resident with deep ties to our school and community. Over the last several years, Noah has coached at various levels in our youth football, baseball, and basketball programs, and we are excited to have Noah on board. That's it.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Always the short one. Okay, I just have one for you this evening. I'm bringing forth tonight for a 1.0 FTE occupational therapist that is district-wide due to a resignation in the district. So we did have a total of 5 candidates. Lindsay Harris, Little Prairie principal, and myself reviewed those candidates who all applied on weekend. We then had an interview team come together consisting of myself,
Mrs. Harris, Allie Lewick, who's our physical therapist in the district, Jen Galvin, our school psychologist at Little Prairie, Kaylee Kohler, who's a special education teacher at Little Prairie, and Matt Burt, who's our program support teacher district-wide. After reviewing those candidates, we had 3 candidates, 1 canceled prior to the interview, and we held 2 interviews then for that position. And upon doing some reference checks of that individual, we have selected Ms. Taylor Knight for that position, who we're bringing forth tonight. I spoke with Taylor's a couple of references, but her supervisor was funny because he said, I've had quite a few people call me, just so you know, about references for Taylor. He's like, she's excellent. She builds rapport with kids. She's very knowledgeable in her field. She looks for a lot of opportunities in collaboration. The thing that she talked a lot about in her interview and her administrator had talked about was her love for transition as well, as we continue to grow our vocational and employability opportunities for students and community. So that is a connection that we have too. But he said, I've had a lot of people call me, so you might want to call her like right now. I've heard of people calling people in the parking lot. And I said, oh boy, okay, it's kind of one of those situations. Okay. So with that, we're happy that we had Taylor accept a position here in the district.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of Ms. Taylor Knight for the district-wide occupational therapist position.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next item, discussion related to the standard response or shelter protocol.
Yeah, this was asked by one of the board members to be brought forth for tonight for discussion amongst the board, so I put it as a discussion item. It was related to recently, I think probably when we had to go into a shelter response per our standard response protocol for one of our safety procedures. So I'll let Steve or anybody else want to take the floor on that, and then I'll be more happy to provide information.
I think this all stemmed from, I don't remember the date, but when there was was it a tornado warning was issued right around the time that schools were being released and parents were not allowed to pick up their kids. And so I felt that it put the school administrators in a tough spot where parents are demanding that they want their kids, and our protocol says we can't release the kids because there's a tornado warning. And if that tornado warning went till 8 o'clock, parents can't pick up their kids till 8 o'clock. And if that is indeed how we want it to be, then maybe if this happens again near release time, then maybe an email gets sent out or something telling parents. So it just was confusing to me, because here you have parents that have other kids in their cars sitting in the parking lot. If there is indeed a tornado warning, they can't go in the building to pick up their kids. They're sitting in the parking lot with kids. So if we can somehow send out a message to them that you're not going to be able to pick up your kid till the tornado warning is over, so it just, I don't know, there were parents, I got a couple of calls when this is not right. If I need to pick up my kid to go take him to an appointment after school, I should be able to sign him out and do this. I don't know if it's a policy or if there's something that we can do to take the burden off of the administrators in each building and put it back on the board or something, that this is the policy or that we have established and this is how it works. So that's really why I want it on the agenda.
And I can just state off of that, and then by all means, have discussion can happen. We don't have a policy, but by all means, we can have direction from the board on our standard response protocols, right? The SRPs are developed by Director of Building Grounds, which was Bob Ellis at one time, Andy Daniels right now, Jake Hernandez, with obviously strong assistance from our local law enforcement, and then our safety, building safety teams, right? So there's a lot of things that go into it, along with, and I even said this to one parent, I said, Department of Justice is involved in our safety response protocols, everything. So it's not just like East Troy's plans. I'm not saying it's consistently that everywhere in regards to response, so it's something we can look at. I think the challenge there that comes into play, and you're absolutely right, is, the longer that a tornado warning goes, right, the stronger the inconvenience is to whatever is transpiring, understood. And we do get that. I think the issue is when people go, just let my kid go, you know, what's the big deal? The challenge is, I respect that of the parents, right? But they're looking at it from a standpoint of one child or a few children, their own, right? Where we're looking at it from a standpoint, we have 1,500 students and over 200 plus staff to have to protect, and then to try to do some consistency that's doing that for every one of them, right? I think that's the balancing act. The other thing is that we said is when people are like, well, I'll just call in, or I'll come to the door and then you let me in. And I'm like, okay, now we're putting our staff at risk. Besides letting the child go, even though the parent might be with them, I'm now putting the staff at risk to have to man the door when we're supposed to be in a tornado shelter, because it's a tornado warning. And we have designated shelters around, right? So I think that, you know, I had a few people saying, like, well, I couldn't get through on the phone. Well, you couldn't get through on the phone because our administrative assistants have to go into the tornado shelter at that time. One of the things we did discuss immediately, actually, we were even discussing it while we were in the restroom or the bathroom that we were confided in, and that was utilizing SkyAlert in the future on that, and designating people to get the messages out on SkyAlert, because we always say we try to utilize SkyAlert only for emergency messages, right? Well, going into a shelter, even though we're not considering it a high-level crisis at that time, we're still in shelter and it's going to be inconvenience, and especially at that time of day, right? It's different than if all of a sudden we're going into a tornado warning. But again, you're right. Somebody could be coming to pick up their child for an appointment, right? The last tornado warning we had was right at the end of the day, too, right? The end of the school day. So I think one of the things that we discussed was getting that SkyAlert out, telling people we've gone into there's a tornado warning, our district has gone into shelter, a reminder, this is what shelter means, right? And because we want to tell people too, the best thing you can do is stay home too. Like, don't be coming to get your child during a tornado warning. Take shelter until it's over. Now, if the warning were to go on for 4 hours, I'm not a meteorologist. I've seen watches go on for that long. I've never seen a warning go on for that length of time, right? So a watch does not put us into the shelter. It's the warning that puts us into the shelter. So that's primarily the major thing. I mean, by all means, we'll be happy to go back and look at it, but it's how to apply it consistently throughout every building. I have Jake here. I don't know if Jake has anything to add on what I just provided.
Importance during that time is making sure that we're keeping everybody as safe as we possibly can. And I understand that the timing of the last one was terrible. But you know, it's our ultimate vision to make sure that we send everybody back home the way we got them. You know what I mean? And again, the timing was terrible. I hope the SkyAlert thing, if we can figure out kind of the nuances around that, would help us get that message out quicker. I agree, you don't typically see warnings last longer than maybe 45 minutes to an hour. But during that time, it's critical that everybody's away from windows in that shelter place. I mean, it'd be no different than kind of what you do at home. You know, in the middle of a warning, you're not coming out of your basement. So I think, you know, there's a lot of angst during that time, and I can certainly appreciate that. But I think it's in everybody's best interest for us to remain in those shelter locations, with us trying to figure out a better way to get that message across of, you know, when does this end and when can we get our children.
What about if it's a severe thunderstorm warning, right?
We don't
Still not
shelter for that.
releasing, Right, so
We
so
don't
they have to be
shelter for that.
released.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't shelter
Yep.
for that.
Right.
If the building level felt like, you know, they needed to delay for like a few minutes, they might just hold on to the kids until they're seeing it, but we don't go into the shelter.
And that's kind of one of those things, like, are we gonna let people out? Well, if there's golf ball size hail coming down, we're not gonna let you out, you know, someone may get hurt. So that one's kind of, you play that one as it develops, but yeah, I have high hopes for the SkyAlert thing. You know, this is always a timing thing and how fast we can get that message out. It's only as good as the information that we're getting and as quick as we can get the information. So we have NOAA radios in most offices. I have one in my office. We all have a weather app of some sort. And that's one thing I would stress to parents is, you know, maybe if you don't have it, maybe add it. So then you know what's coming. You know, you can kind of see, you know, and maybe reach out and say, you know, this is a possibility. you know, or what's the likelihood? We can't really answer that. You
And
know,
the
it's like predicting the weather.
Well, and the difficult thing
about
about that time, right, it's like we say about any safety situations, you know, you don't get to pick the time in which it occurs. We always talk about that during lunches and other things, right, or events. But the tough part about that day in particular, not only was it at that given time of dismissal, right? That if anybody's always been around at dismissal time, we know that, right? People line up half an hour before dismissal sometime too. So if the Skylar, we can get out as fast, but if the Skylar happens 5 minutes before dismissal and people are waiting, they've been there 20, 25 minutes before, they're gonna receive a Skylar, but it's still, unfortunately, they may feel like you didn't get out fast enough. Well, the warning just happened a few minutes ago. So that's right, and we've talked about that. We try to get out information, but it's, right, it's the challenge always in everything is sometimes information gets out faster than we can get it out because of even people sharing it, right? So, in this case, we feel we can utilize Skylar and utilize it in a more convenient manner. Due to the fact it's not about gathering facts and making sure you're sharing the right information, we're just sharing, we're in a shelter, it's a warning. So you don't have to gather any facts before you're sharing information.
Is that something that would be like you as a district-wide type of thing, or does this happen at individual building level? These
Skylar?
alerts- These alerts that get pushed?
Skylar would be a district-wide. I mean, it can happen per building, but obviously a shelter for tornado warnings happening throughout our entire district.
Okay.
So Skylar allows us to, we have it broken down per building, academic year, non-academic year, right? So we have it broken down to who will receive all of that information. One of those alerts that would be district-wide would just go district-wide academic year right away.
I think you set your settings in Skyward for like if you want texts or emails, maybe.
I think you do during like the whole registration
Yeah,
enrollment
I think
process.
so.
Yes.
So you would maybe even get a text as a parent,
Yeah.
not just an email, is my
Like,
point.
I got one
Yep.
from the town of East Troy. There was a tornado warning. I didn't even know I had that as an option, but I got an alert, you know, so
You
if
must have paid your
there's,
taxes.
I don't know if that was automated or if that was, someone does that, but.
Yeah, I
guess
mean, I
it-
think the unfortunate miss is that we didn't have this already set up. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Mhm. Yeah.
annoying, it's frustrating, it's,
Yeah, what are the odds?
in
that
some
they're-
utopia, we could even say to the parents in the parking lot, like, look, we can funnel you right here and now you're in shelter too. I mean, I'm dreaming, right? But, that, to me, that would be the ultimate, is like, cause that's just a terrible time. I mean, in the middle of the school day,
It's not-
way less, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, you still have the parent who wants to be with their kid maybe, or something like that, and I don't think it's fair at all for staff to be shuttling kids out in the middle of a
No.
tornado warning. I mean, that, I don't know how we could find that to be okay.
And hopefully Walworth County can catch a break, because we've had plenty of tornadoes and tornado warnings lately, so.
Yeah.
Can I just add a little nuance, like tomorrow, the weather's not supposed to be great either, but I think they have to look right around that. The other nuance to this is the buses,
Mhm.
right?
Right,
So
it's
buses are
exactly
on
what I was
Mhm.
just gonna,
zero,
right.
So then by the time they get to us, there's about, and then we represent you with cars, families that are now sitting out there with additional plans that. So, that's the other one. So whatever that message is.
Well, that played out a little bit in this last one because if you recall, the warning got lifted like, and maybe so by the time the drivers got in the bus and they came over, we were already leaving and so the transportation schedule that afternoon was
What do we do if the buses are out and there's a tornado warning issued? I mean, are the buses recalled? Are they finish your route? You're not sheltering in place in a bus.
I don't wanna respond on what don't know.
Right.
I'm sure the bus drivers in Rachel will let protocol, but I would not wanna respond on that without looking at our SIPs for this particular incident.
And I would hope it goes without saying, but like, if we're sheltering until 4 p.m., your child is safe, staff is not leaving, we know pickup will be delayed, everyone's staying until whatever time, right? Like, that should go without saying, but.
Yeah, and I want that stated, yeah, I mean, you're not seeing staff leave, like, oh, they get to leave, no, we're sheltered in place, staff staying in place. And not just because we need proper supervision, no, it's your safety, you're staying in place. Our SRPs aren't letting you go just because you're an adult, you're gonna leave. No, you're not. You're gonna stay in place till the warning's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I truly appreciate you bringing it up from the lens of how can we assist the administration with making sure that they're not having to take on
There's no reason
various
Lindsay
people.
should get 20 phone calls from angry parents about how come I can't get my kid,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It's not. I'm sure she
So,
wasn't the only one
open
getting
dialogue helps for people to understand the SRP even, and we have actually even talked about that too. Jake and I talked about not only getting out communication in regards to what shelter is, about sharing some of the SRP protocols, what are our standard response. There's gonna be a balance to that because of how much should be shared out of our standard response, but some general information I think is very important.
All right. Next item, discussion and action if appropriate regarding community survey composed by school perceptions.
Yes, so, this has been an ongoing process, right? It's not just all out of the blue that a survey was developed. What the survey got developed was from a lot of time and efforts over literally, you couldn't even say years, if not for sure the last, solid months, from the board, from various stakeholders, facilities, subcommittee, to the CFAC, Community Facilities Advisory Committee. From all of that information, then now the survey is getting developed for the board to take a look at, provide feedback if comfortable, possibly a motion for approval tonight with any changes. And if significant changes and not feeling comfortable about those changes being made, then a delayed in any type of motion with possibly a special meeting to be set up this week for those changes to be made and shared once again for the board to feel comfortable. But I'll just kind of go through it. The beginning is, states kind of the draft that we have right now is dear families and community members. Last year, and again, the board's probably gonna offer a lot of suggestions and changes on this, okay? So I'm just stating a draft right now. Last year, the East Troy community supported an operational referendum. This funding maintains most programs, services, and staffing for the next 2 school years. Somebody right away might say, I thought it was a 3-year, it was. We're talking about the year 1 has just ended, so for the next 2 school years. We are very, very thankful for the support. The district will likely need to ask voters to extend this funding when it expires in 2026. We're being very upfront. Now, that verbiage might get changed tonight and everything, but point is, we're talking about being very upfront. We're not trying to surprise people, forget about the operational referendum, surprise people maybe 2 years from now. No, I mean, we want people to be well-informed if we're possibly going to ask them for feedback in regards to a capital referendum to come. So they understand that there's both dilemmas going on at the same time. Now we need your input regarding our aging facilities. A recent facility assessment identified more than 60 million in potential projects. We recognize completing all of this at one time is not realistic. Therefore, the district formed a Citizens Facilities Advisory Committee. This group, made up of parents, staff, and community members, help prioritize the most pressing needs. The Board of Education will use their work and the feedback gathered through this community-wide survey to finalize a plan. To keep all feedback confidential, survey responses are collected by School Perceptions, an independent education research firm. And then it goes on to talk about how the survey could be taken online or hard copy, and then it's signed by all of the 5 school board members. Second page is a lot of demographic information about the respondent to give feedback, so they can obviously break down the information, desegregate it. And then there's a part on the second page which just talk about funding sources to help the community member understand, again, the difference between an operational referendum and a capital referendum. So we remind people there are 2 types of school referendums that local voters could approve. An operational referendum asks voters to approve funding to help maintain class sizes, programs, student services, and staffing. This is the type of referendum East Troy community voters approved last year. A capital referendum asks voters to approve issuing debt, taking out a loan to pay for major building projects such as renovation and new construction. This is the type of referendum needed to pay for the plan described in this survey. Then the third page goes into the base plan, as we've called it, which is what we've been sharing. It's had a couple different terminologies, but I think we've all agreed that it's the base plan. Heavily input by all groups. That is, nothing's changed on that base plan from what's been presented now the last few weeks and months to CFAC and others. So that's basically the 24 million base plan that everyone agreed on, that said the Board of Education is recommending the following projects to address the most pressing needs. And so it talks about those pressing needs, and I'll go through them right now, which is renovate the Prairie View and middle school main entrances to improve building security and better monitor / control visitor access. Redesign middle school student pickup and drop-off traffic flow to better separate pedestrians from vehicles and expand parking. Remodel, update middle school science labs. Heating and cooling system components at Prairie View and high school are beyond their life expectancies, some 10 years past, and finding parts is difficult and expensive. Electrical distribution systems at the middle school and high schools are failing. The plan would repair or replace aging, inefficient parts and systems. And I want that verbiage to be recognized. The plan would repair or replace, because there's been a lot of work on that repair and replace. So what parts would be repaired and what part would be replaced, and that came from CFAC, which we're very appreciative of, and that is taking stronger looks at repair or replace. Repair or replace roof sections at Prairie View, middle school and the high school. Replace energy inefficient windows at Prairie View, middle school and high school. Expand high school and replace the middle school fire alarm. Expand high school and replace the middle school fire alarm, so we're talking about fire alarms. The transportation building has structural issues. The plan would demolish a section of the bus shelter, build 3 bus bays, and replace the asphalt. And that's the base plan. And that comes to approximately 24 million. So then what we put in there is the cost that we have to date now. We have more updated numbers than we did in February, from Baird in regards to that, with obviously some estimates and projections. But with an interest rate of anywhere from 4.75 to 5.25, it's estimated at this time then, again, you gotta take into equalized growth, and I think if you saw on the sheet, it takes into account a 2% growth up until 2025 and a 1% growth thereafter, which compared to where we've been, I think is a pretty reasonable estimate compared to what we had last year was off the charts. So I'm glad they didn't put that in there, which would be great, but I don't think that's reasonable to conclude that we'll have 20% each year. The approval would increase the property tax mill rate by 0.43, which would represent $43 for every $100,000 of property value. So it'd be an annual tax increase of $43 for every $100,000 of property value for the 24 million base plan. Base plan. That's what would be the question in the survey. And then the next thing that came out, and this came out a lot from discussions, and that was additional middle school projects. Could there be a consideration of an expansion in regards to other needs that are needed besides just asking the community about the base plan? There was a lot of great dialogue at the last CFAC meeting. So the next part is that it's called additional middle school projects. The middle school gym is too small. Areas surrounding the court, sidelines, entrances, and seating are congested, which creates safety and injury concerns. The following plan was developed to improve and extend the service life of the middle school. So by doing this, it's not just about addressing the need of the current small area of the gymnasium, but it would address then building a gym and relocating the fitness classroom, renovating the existing gym into 3 science labs. So then you're taking the current gymnasium area that we have, and it would get renovated into the 3 science labs, and then the fitness classroom would also go into that area. And the reason the fitness center classroom would get moved is because then we'd be reconfiguring where that space is into where the main entrance and office area would get moved into there for a secure entrance area. And then with obviously the redesigning of the student pickup and drop off. So to do those things, the addition of a brand new gymnasium, renovating all those additional areas within, that would be an additional $8 million. And so that would then be with a base plan of 24 And if one were to say, yes, I'm interested in the additional middle school projects too, it would come to a total of $32 million is what it's estimated at right now, roughly speaking. Which the additional 8 million onto the 24, which would be 32 million, that impact then would be, it would go from the 0.43, it would go up to a 0.62. So it'd be $62 annually for every $100,000 of property value. That's really in a really rough shell. Everybody will see the survey ultimately whenever it's ready, but I just thought I'm trying to share it publicly a little bit so you have a gist of it, and now the board will have much discussion and dialogue about changes and recommendations to it.
You got a list?
Well, I missed the working meeting, I'm sorry. But I just, so I can rattle it off here, or, you know, if we don't think we're gonna make a decision tonight, I can save it. But for the base plan, there's just some rewording and some adjusting to hopefully better explain each of these bullet points, and I don't think I'm adding a ton of length to it. So we could go over that. For the additional middle school project, again, a couple kind of nitpicky things, but I think we need to just use consistent language. So either it's a fitness center or it's a fitness classroom, but it's not both things. That is kind of confusing. And I assume this is very well understood, but the mocks that we saw of potential redesigns and reconfigurations for student drop-off were not on this end of the building at all. And I fully understand that this is conceptual. There's a ton of engineering and like actual construction design that needs to go into this actual construction renovation plan, but that's a kind of notable difference to me. So if we're saying we also want to reconfigure student drop-off and pickup, which was going to be on the west end of the building, and maybe it still is, but this drawing is suggesting that the secure entrance is all the way on the east end of the building.
That's a great point. And there was a lot of discussion today on that.
Okay, yeah, and I missed it, sorry.
No, that's okay. But there was a lot of discussion in that, and one of the issues that, and again, the board can request for PSI on their drawings to go over to, ultimately in here to school perceptions. The verbiage of redesign student pickup drop-off absolutely was said, it needs to be in there. People had that as a high amount of request and need, and we know we need it, and we've done a lot of work on it. We are concerned that people would forget that these are such a conceptual. And we were like, we didn't want people to get so caught up on, well, I'm not sure I like the parking over there, why don't we do this? And we're like, we're far ways away from finalizing that component, so we didn't want people to get caught up on yes, no, probably not, probably yes, and when it's just such a conceptual, but we wanted people to know, like, it's getting addressed in this plan. One of the things that it would get addressed in there is, yeah, exactly, you're right, and that was before, it was on the west main entrance, now it's been moved to the east under this plan if it were to be approved, and there is no doubt parking and drop-off exiting would have to be as well on that area as possibly the other area. You might designate one side with staffing and one side for more of the parents.
Sure.
So, but again, those were early drawings too that I'm just referencing back to that I saw.
I guess I would say we should asterisk that, you know, the graphic is for conceptual help only, and, you know, the exact construction plan. I mean, even if we want to do it this way, we might determine that we
That's right.
can't for some reason.
That's
And
right.
so, you know, I don't want anybody to think they were tricked into some
Yeah.
plan that really isn't a plan. It's just a concept.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this is just a survey based on.
Correct, but, I mean, you know, I liked that and I said yes to that, and that's not what it
Sure.
is. Like, I want people to understand where we're at, that this is not like a literal architectural
It's not
plan
a referendum
for,
asking
no.
what we want to build.
No.
It's
I mean, do you want me to go through other suggested changes or not nitpick it right now?
Well, it depends if you want to approve something tonight or hold it over to another meeting.
Could go through them, and I
Let's
don't
hear
mind,
it.
you could go through them, and if everybody's kind of like good with all of them, or you guys can have further discussion off of it, and then off of that, you could follow up saying, here's what, right, we think the whole board kind of agreed on if you went through it, and then we can just forward it on to Bill.
I also know this is just for the survey. This is not for preparation for a referendum question to be asked. But I would also hope that there's something we could direct folks to for all of the work that we've already done on digging in, researching, investigating, planning. So whether it's another QR code or another link, we have that stuff, and we need to make it as easy for people to get to as possible. So that has to be on the first page, in my opinion. I can give you these edits if we like them. Nobody has to try to catch all of it, but, under the base plan, I would want to update to say, the Board of Education recommends the following projects to address the most pressing facility and learning environment needs. I'm okay with the first two bullets as they're written. The third bullet to say remodel/update. I think
It's
three.
that one is more like that, I feel like that doesn't hit home how pressing that need is. To me, when I went through and did
Yeah.
the tour,
Yeah.
I walked in the classroom and I said, this is not a science classroom.
It's
but we're
science
doing
is being in
science
a
it,
classroom.
Right.
Yeah,
It
so I
was
wrote
like-
remodel/update 3 middle school science classrooms to be better functioning/equipped or something. They're
I don't know
rooms
what
being
the
used
exact
for
word-
science.
Right, yeah. I don't know what the exact word is. I mean, it's got carpet on the floor and, you know, if you're gonna spill chemicals, it's
Yeah.
like, no, you know.
Yeah, I don't wanna say we're remodeling labs because they're not all even
No,
labs,
they're not
so
even
that's not
labs,
really
right.
accurate.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not labs to begin with.
We can say we wanna turn them into science labs, but that's not what they are today.
So maybe just 3 middle school classrooms in a science lab.
If you don't know, it would be like deciding to do science right here
Yep,
Yeah,
on this carpet.
Yep.
That's what it would be like, on this table.
agreed.
And if you don't see a sink, that's because there isn't a sink. So,
yeah, that one just seemed light.
yeah.
Maybe head in there, remodel/update the 55-year-old middle
Yeah.
school science classrooms.
Art room.
Well, and just to clarify, you said 3, but actually option 1 is just ends up with 2 science classrooms. Option 2 gives us 3 science classrooms,
Good question.
right? Do I understand that?
On the base plan?
Base plan gives us 2 science classrooms.
Yeah, because we'd just be addressing those right now, that's right.
So there's 3 rooms being used for science today.
Yeah, but it's with ag too, right? The agriculture? Come on, Mr. Trindle, this is your area.
So we have grade level science classrooms. 2 are our, what I call them lab rooms, lab classrooms. Our 6th grade science classroom is in a classroom. It's carpet, no sink, it's a lab. Another thing to think about is the addition of ag could be another space that you utilize in that for that.
Mhm.
So we have, I'd say we have 1 lab, 1 partial lab, and 1 classroom that we're using for science.
So you would say right now, I'll put a name to it, Mr. Johnson's area is what you're referencing as
The
the
lab.
lab.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's not even
I
up
would
to
agree,
date,
but
right.
it's at least the closest thing we have to a
It's
science
the closest
area.
thing we have to a
Science
science
classroom.
lab.
Yeah,
Mr. Schaefer's room, again, some tables, but low level, not really lab space, not a science lab. And then our 6th grade science classroom is just a classroom. So another thing to think about is bring ag to the middle school. they are probably gonna be just in a classroom for next year with the hope of expanding into a more of a science space at some point.
So what does this third bullet point actually mean? Touch 2 rooms, touch 3 rooms?
I think we're under the impression too, but I'd have to ask PSI on that.
Okay,
Jake, do you
2
know off the top
rooms.
of your head? What does the third, it's 2 rooms. It's not touching truly the 6th grade that has, yeah.
So maybe that gets restated, convert 2 existing classrooms into science labs?
It might get confusing to parents because they'll look at it and go, well, they already have a lab. And even though it's not much of one.
Sure.
It's got black soapstone countertops, but that's about it.
That's about it, right?
I think the remodel update 2 middle school classrooms into science labs, I mean, it's truly what's happening. And we truly don't have, we're not saying we're remodeling a 3rd one right now, under the base
Right.
plan, under the
Just the
base.
2.
One of the things too that I know that, you know, and it's hard, as we were doing this whole, even, I think we were thinking about this in numerous different meetings, committee meetings and everything else too, and that is trying to help people when they're taking it, because they might look at a base plan and go, well, you got it in the base plan, so what's this extension? Like, you know, I see science labs again in the extension, like the 3 rooms into the current gymnasium, let's say, right? But you have it here, well, but what, like CFAC and other places, what we're saying is, yeah, but it's allowing us by reconfiguring and putting some new science labs into the current gymnasium, then it's allowing us to have those classrooms where we're using for science to actually be utilized for the right thing, and that's just a different discipline that's not a lab, right? And if anybody's been to the middle school, right, and seen it, one of the things we always talk about, I mean, it came up during the CFAC meeting from one of our staff members sharing it with CFAC, and that was just how small some of those rooms are. Right, when we have 25 to 30 students in those rooms, and Adams can speak to this better than me, but, you know, some of those rooms are not even close to having proper square footage for 25 or 30 students, truly. If you were to compare the space that we have in many of our high school classrooms now, after the 2015, and the usage of that space, for, you know, as you could call it, clean and dirty areas, as they call it in learning oftentimes, but I think our staff would just tell you from a standpoint of management and not having issues, because you have actually doable space with students to have proper space. So that's one of the things about that extended second component that came out that night was, oh, if we got those extensions and renovation and that, it would allow us then maybe possibilities to do more reconfiguring of some of the other rooms too.
And I think if I can just speak on the gym space issue, like that gym is super tight. For volleyball games, they're serving in front of that line because the bleachers are past it essentially. They're serving from our locker room almost. So it is extremely tight to even host anything there. Basketball court, maybe a foot on either end. So I mean, in my eyes, that's a safety concern. You don't even have room to do a layup there without hitting a wall. So there are some just general space issues in that gym.
Thanks, Adam.
The bleachers are also not conducive for anyone who has trouble moving around, so. So the third bullet would say something like remodel / update 2 middle school science classrooms into science labs to better function or to be better equipped, something like that. And this is where Jake, like this is a picture of the room, like it, you know, people will want to see, like this is, when we say what we're doing with that, like we really mean, it's just a classroom, right? The fourth bullet, I would start with almost the last sentence, repair or replace aging / inefficient parts and systems of heating and cooling at Prairie View and High School or something like that. And then explain it. Components are beyond their life expectancy, some 10 years past, and finding parts is difficult and expensive. Electrical distribution systems at the middle school and high school are failing. I'm not sure if we thought about this and purposefully weren't ready to talk a specific number, but for the next two, do we have a sense of how much of the roofs this is, how many of the windows this is? Are we able to put some sort of again, if we're gonna say 24 million, how much of that stuff is getting touched? Uh-huh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to answer that, Anna, we do have that information.
Yeah.
So we have how many basically roof sections and which ones, Jake had shared that, which ones will be repaired and which ones will be replaced.
Yeah.
So we do have that.
I think the idea was not to go into detail here, just the general, here's what we'd like to do, here's the price, are you supportive of it or not?
Sure.
But I do, your QR code will have that, because we were actually talking about that today. So we were talking about the presentation of the base needs that happened a couple weeks ago at one of the CFACs. Yeah, so when Jake was going
Yeah,
over
great.
heavily the repair replace, it'll be in that presentation, which we'll make available to him.
The fire alarm bullet is confusing, so I would say,
Yeah, probably expand high school fire alarm and replace, yeah. Probably just
so
put fire alarm after high
replace
school.
the middle school fire alarms and expand alarm system at high school or something like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know if anybody else has comments on this page, but I think that's closer. Thanks. So then on the next page, sorry, I'm not done yet. Um, for the first bullet point, I guess I would, again, just say, can we call it either a fitness classroom or a fitness center?
And again, maybe whatever you guys think. That we were, sorry about it, we were, I thought we were settling a fitness classroom, so I didn't think it should have the center in that image. But if the board would prefer center, by all means, we were kind of going with the idea of fitness classroom, because we're like, people are gonna think fitness center like at the high school,
Yeah.
and it's not even close to, it's truly a fitness classroom. It's not a center.
Yeah, I'd say classroom.
I mean, this is where the weights are in the middle school, correct? That's the room we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a few treadmills, that's about it. Yeah.
And then in the third bullet point, it says reconfigure existing space into a secure main entrance with an office. Now, obviously, the picture shows you where the main office is now, but existing space is vague to me. I don't know what that means. Yeah.
I don't feel like the second page captures. I think the first option might even make the middle school feel even a little more cramped. We're taking up some space for the secure entrance and all that kind of stuff. The second option gives us more space, more breathing room. Do we want to add a bullet that's just something that expand the total learning space in the building by X square feet or X percent? Because we say we extend the life of the middle school, but we're adding a gym, but it's not highlighting the other stuff we're getting by getting that space for the science classrooms.
Yeah, I would agree, saying something about reconfiguring existing spaces into larger classrooms or something,
Yeah.
that's really what you'd be doing with the office space and the existing classrooms.
Current classrooms were sciences, right?
Right.
They're getting into those labs now, which we're
Yeah.
reconfiguring the current gym,
Mhm.
which now allows us space for additional, reconfiguration of either larger classrooms or more classrooms.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so if we can just
Yep.
say gaining classroom space by number of classrooms or amount of percent, or I don't know what reflects that better, but. I think that's the biggest boon to extending the life of the middle school.
Mhm. Phrase that somehow, but reconfiguring. Larger rooms. Mhm.
Cause we even talked about that when we did the preschool projects up here.
Yep.
We get them into larger rooms, where we said, that's the ideal, but we're like, if push came to shove and we had an explosion pretty quick, I mean, of enrollment explosion, right? Then we could, if we had to, we could always make 2 rooms out of the couple of large ones again,
Mhm.
if we had to wait for expansion later on again.
Yep, it'd be the same thing here.
Yep.
What does everybody think about the changes tonight? Going with it, or do we wanna have another meeting to review it again and before we do anything?
I mean, I would like to proof it one more time, but not to change the, you know.
Could we-
I feel it's close enough for approval, pending a few changes we discussed and a few.
Could that just be emailed for just review?
Review and then asking, like, cause you and Ann were gonna sit in on the workshop of development.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, based on your guys' discussion and approval, saying, yeah, we're approving of this, we're good with the overall content, just with some of the changes. Then when Bill makes those changes tomorrow, I can have him share it with the both of you since you're on the initial. And if you guys are, yep, they encompass the changes, or kind of a few more subtle ones that like, but ultimately, board's approved tonight, that when you guys get the green light, good to go.
Okay, is everybody okay with that, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is maybe just minor enough, but on the first page, is it worth saying in 2023 instead of last year? I think it's hard to keep track of what year
Years,
everything
I
happens
agree.
and what years questions didn't pass.
Yeah, and
or
that
did
matches
pass.
up better with the 2026
Great.
that's already on there.
Great.
Year is probably fine. Everybody
I don't have a
remembers.
strong opinion either way.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the survey pending, approval of any changes by, Ann and Ted.
Okay.
Since we're doing that, I'm not gonna second it, so.
Me either.
I'll second.
All right, discussion.
No, I think this is, I mean, I think we're really close, and I think knowing the community's thoughts, I mean, I feel like these are 2 really pretty crisp
Mhm.
directions, and that'll be good to know.
Yes. It's the next piece of the puzzle.
Yep.
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, pupil non-discrimination self-evaluation report per DPI.
Yeah, so every 5 years, the Department of Public Instruction requires school districts to basically perform a self-evaluation of their pupil non-discrimination policies, procedures, practices. The last one that was done in the district was in 2017. You're probably like, that doesn't add up to 5 years. No, it doesn't. That was because it was delayed a little bit because of the COVID pandemic. So that requirement got pushed back just a little bit. So you can see that that was a little bit of a lengthy process. So the people that served on that team were myself, Amy Foss-Panchak, the Director of Teaching and Learning, Lisa Dragata, who's our database coordinator, Brian O'Leary, our athletic director, and then Taylor Baumeister, who's our instruction assessment program support 612. We also, that team collaborated in a two-part series with DPI to learn the requirements. So the requirements, which I'll outline, did change from the previous 2017 self-evaluation, as everything with DPI, right? Everything kind of continues to grow and scaffold, and so there were additional requirements that were not required of the last self-evaluation. So there was a two-part series with DPI in which we learned a little bit more about the process, went through the template, which was pretty extensive, and then from there, we broke into either partners, individually. We worked with administrators, people service members, administrative assistants, other administrators, really collectively in order to gather all of the data that was needed. So I'll just outline the 8 parts, the components that are required. Again, that is school board policies and administrative procedures, enrollment trends in classes and programs, methods, practices, curriculum, and materials used in instruction, counseling, and pupil assessment and testing. The 4th one is trends and patterns of disciplinary actions, including suspensions, expulsions, and handling of pupil harassment. 5th one is participation trends and patterns and the school district's support of athletic, extracurricular, and recreational activities. The 6th area is trends and patterns in awarding scholarships and other forms of recognition and achievement provided or administered by the district. The 7th area is the school district efforts to achieve equality of educational opportunity and non-discrimination. And the 8th and final is school district technology, including electronic communications by school district staff. The actual report itself does not get submitted to DPI, but an assurance, once you take action on that tonight, the assurance gets signed and submitted, and then the report is only requested by DPI if there is a need for that on their behalf. I think it was a really interesting process. So the board previously had voted, right, to move to Neola in terms of board policy. A lot of the discrepancies and findings that we had came from, especially around the non-discrimination language, is very outdated, is a lot of what we find. That was in some of the findings, right? So kind of cleaning that up through working with Neola will be a natural cause and effect of that. The other thing that was pretty strong across a lot of the findings was the consistency of the data, right? And so, you know, it really unveiled some of the processes and procedures that we have in place, uncovered some of the areas that we know we needed to improve our data collection in. So we do have a system now moving forward for training for administration, pupil service team, and administrative assistants in the better collection of some of that data for the fidelity purposes of that, which is kind of comprehensive, that, as you'll see, in all of those 8 areas. Does anyone have any questions about any of the information in all of that? I do want to thank the team members for that, because it was a pretty extensive process. It was pretty time consuming, so I want to thanks to those 4 individuals for helping with that.
Yeah, there's a ton here.
There's a ton there.
Yeah, it's a lot of data.
It's a lot of data, yeah. And we do hope that, you know, the next time, right, so 5 years from now, we can say, hey, through our previous findings and our ability to outline, you know, what our action steps were then, now we even have better data to support where we are moving forward. And then with Neola in place, what do those policies look like that coordinate? So, yeah. Time consuming, but it's always something good to, you know, kind of take a deep dive into some of that information.
All right. And this needs approval by the board?
It does, it needs action. Yes,
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the pupil non-discrimination self-evaluation report as it was presented to us.
Discussion? All
I
in
had,
favor of,
well, I had one thing.
go ahead.
This was something that was covered before, and I don't know that it necessarily has really anything to do with the content of everything, but there was one recommendation where it says that,
What page are you on?
41, it talks about where, staff have their name listed versus their title, and I think a couple meetings ago, we talked that there are certain requirements where their name must be included. I just wanna make sure that we don't change it to something that would be in violation. Is this covered by that, or is this?
So those would be considerations that would be if they were.
Okay. I'm just making sure we don't cross any of those boundaries or anything in doing that.
All right, any other questions? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Amanda. Overnight field trip request.
Evening. Two FFA field trip requests. The one at the Alliant Energy Center in June is the National FFA Convention, and you have to have students qualify and be selected to be able to present at that conference. So just bringing attention to that, that's a pretty prestigious trip that they were invited to participate in. And then in July, they take their annual field trip to Devil's Lake as part of their officer retreat and leadership training over the summer. So those are the two overnight field trips from Katie Vacula and Ryan Holly.
Make a motion to approve the FFA field trips. The first is June 10th through 13th in Madison, and the second is July 15th through the 17th at Devil's Lake.
Discussion?
At FFA, man.
Yep.
What if there's
Keep
a
it
tornado
rolling.
warning?
Lots of trips.
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Enhancement supplemental compensation request,
That'll go into executive session.
administration and supervisory contracts,
Executive session.
employee leave of absence,
Executive session.
and consideration of easement with the East Troy Community School District.
This will be done in open session to begin with, and if the board wants to have further dialogue and discussion from a standpoint of a negotiation or discussion about what a counter offer or anything on the letter of intent, they can go into executive session at a later time to do so.
Okay.
Again, if you kind of want to give us the highlights.
Is it on? There it is. Good evening. My name is Jim Sedgwick. I'm from the Highmont Group, representing Kiwanis Heritage East Troy. We've been in front of this body in the past as we've been seeking feasibility for an expansion for the Heritage East Troy. That's been an evolutionary process as we've tried to narrow down our options for doing such. The latest plan that we have, we're trying to solve some stormwater issues, to be very candid with you. The municipal well that is on effectively within our site, there's a restriction, a 400-foot restriction that says we can't put any stormwater facilities excuse me, within that radius. So we're seeking to work with the school board and the school district to see if there's a way that we can negotiate an easement for us to put a stormwater pond. I believe you have a plan. We've carved out a general location for that pond that would be near the property line, and hopefully designed and constructed in such a way that it would not interfere with school programming or mitigate or minimize the any of the interference that it might have with school programming. And we're obviously willing to pay for that easement. So we've outlined our request to start that conversation, and I welcome any questions.
I don't understand where it is on here.
That's their existing building.
Yep.
That's the property line.
Yep.
So they're looking at this area approximately for an easement to put storm water
Somewhere over there.
somewhere over there.
It would all be subject to final engineering and plans and that we would share with the school board, obviously before the easement would be executed. We've laid it out roughly based, I think we've identified an area that's approximately a half acre in size on the plan. That would be the targeted area for the easement.
Is that, Jim, is that the large rectangular part outside the circle?
Yes. It's effectively behind the homes
Oh,
that are
down
just
this?
to the west of the school grounds.
Okay. So the circle is.
The circle
the circle's
represents,
indicating where you had to go outside of.
yes, that represents a 400-foot radius around the well. Mhm.
And what's this then?
Oh, yeah, that's the proposed possible.
The square footage will be determined by the civil engineers in terms of the size and the capacity of the pond. Our preliminary engineering calculations based upon the size of our expansion, the building expansion, indicates that we should be able to fit whatever we need within that general half-acre square or rectangle that we've indicated.
That's what I wanna know. Yeah, put it there.
Closer to the.
That's not our land, that belongs to the church next door. Yeah.
I know it's early in planning, but do you have a sense of what like the safety and aesthetic considerations would be around this project?
I don't at this point, but obviously we would design it with that in mind. I mean, as a public school facility, I'm not even sure that at this point that it would actually retain water. You know, it could be a dry basin, for instance. It just needs to capture water for a short period of time as it then dissipates, but none of that engineering has been finalized yet.
Yeah, so many variables with that, with types of soil and everything else. I mean, this is mainly sand, so anything should disappear pretty quickly, but yeah, you just don't know that for sure.
We would think, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is still early in our design process. You know, we're at a stage where we need to see if this is a possibility with the school district before we take it any further with engineering. If it's not a possibility, then we need to go to Plan C or D or E or whatever the case may be. But we're seeking some early indication as to the willingness of the school district to work with us on this easement.
And that's just one possible location on school district property. It could be somewhere else that might be more amenable.
We've actually explored a few different options already that turned out to not be as feasible. I think, you know, we originally had talked with the school district about land directly to the east of our site. I guess our view of that is that that's probably more valuable land to the school, which is why we gravitated toward the easement on the southern part of our site. It's, you know, more out of the way per se. Little less intrusive, if you will, to school programming, and could act as more of a landscaped feature between the two properties.
Okay.
You can't move it north, right? Because that's within the circle then?
I didn't,
You couldn't move it north of this proposed spot because it would be within the circle.
yeah, we have to stay outside of that circle, correct. It would have to be right along Highway 20 and further east onto the school property land, which we didn't view as being very, very favorable for you, but it's harder for us to direct stormwater that direction than it is to go to the south.
I mean, I prefer that myself, but
This way or this
yeah,
way?
north. I'm not even saying, you know, to do it, but like along the road to me, is better than here.
Yeah, topography, I'm sure plays into that.
Once this is in, that's what it's gonna be pretty much forever, right? There's no, you can't move these things, it's all permanent. so
No,
this
it would be a
is now
permanent
and
easement,
forever.
yes. Mhm.
Has anyone else seen this from a athletics, building and grounds perspective? Do you have any questions? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we're not using that area right now for anything. There's no fields there, or it's just behind the soccer field.
Which area are you talking about,
Where the recommended. Some practice. Okay.
I don't feel like we've been, I mean, Brian is the expert in this, I don't feel like we've been in discussions in regards to athletics about putting some additional fields adjacent to that we don't currently have on site here, specifically softball.
Sure.
And looking for areas that
And specifically looking to put or potentially put some of those fields on our property. And so we have discussed what would that look like perhaps out towards Highway 20. Very preliminary discussions. I mean, very early stages, but something that we've been talking about.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see that you were sitting there. I would have asked you if you had.
You
Yeah.
said,
Yeah, and I didn't see him anymore. Is he still here? I didn't. Okay, all right.
you said out towards 20 is what you're saying those preliminary discussions were? Around the adjacent to Highway 20 is what you just said? Or is that,
Well, we
did I
don't
hear that right?
have, so currently our softball field, we borrow, is the word I'm going to use, the villages over
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
So we have baseball diamonds, our baseball team competes over on the baseball field, but we do not have our own softball fields. And therefore, there are some, I'm gonna use the word discrepancies between the fields. Like, for example, the village fields do not have any dugouts. So the softball players just sit on benches, the coaches just talk to them, the parents are right behind them, whereas the baseball diamonds have dugouts. It's a little bit more of a professional type setting versus more of, I'm gonna use the word recreational setting. So we have talked about what would that look like to bring those fields onto our property, where would we put them? And we have talked about, I mean, that is some area over there, that is available.
No, I would just reiterate that, I mean, yes, it is very preliminary, the conversations that we have had. And those are all options that we've looked at with stuff in that. I actually found a drawing from probably 8 years ago that kind of laid out baseball, softball to keep everything on the high school campus itself. Again, this is big picture. This is like, you know, what we would picture East Troy High School looking like. But again, utilizing the land that we do have in this location.
Do you have another potential place that you want us to know about before we potentially deliberate about this location?
Another site for the stormwater management pond? No, this is,
It's this or nothing.
I think we're getting pretty close to
Okay.
this or nothing.
That's what I wanted to be really clear. like-
Yeah, I mean, we've examined a lot of different options, but we're really getting down to the narrow choices here.
Yeah, if you said, we really don't want it, but, you know, this could potentially work.
Yeah, no, we've tried to be careful about, you know, being selective about how we move things forward, things that we think can work, and
Sure.
we think this can work, but we're getting pretty light on alternatives at this
Okay.
point.
If it's gonna be like that forever, why an easement and not a purchase? I'm sure there's good reasons I just agree with them.
Because the school district can still own it, we'll maintain it, it's, you know, there's necessarily no value to us actually owning it, per se. We want to pay for the rights to use it. Plus, it's a little bit awkward in terms of like land division and just kind of carving out sort of this little sliver of land between the school and the houses, and it's a little bit cleaner way to do it from a real estate transactional perspective, I think.
Okay. I guess we can talk more about this in closed session with the fees and the actual dollar amount. There was some questions from the district's attorney about the format of this. She had some recommendations and some options on it that she thought was better from a district standpoint. So do you see any issues with?
That's fine. I think this format is more proposal oriented and just to get the conversation going. If there's I mean, ultimately there will be a legal easement that would be drafted.
Right.
We haven't gone to that level yet, but that would be the ultimate goal. And if there's some intermediate step that we should take, let us know. But this is something that can just outline their intentions to get things started.
Sure. All right.
And on the pricing, I just say, you say why the pricing, I think we try to put our best foot forward on this. I think if you did research on what other public bodies pay for easements such as the DNR and those sorts of things, it's considerably less than what we're offering. But like I said, we're running out of options, so we're trying to put our best foot forward and get your attention with it and see if there's a way that we can make something happen.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jim. All right, reports.
The only one I have is I just wanted to acknowledge that obviously the upcoming graduation ceremony, which is always an exciting day for everyone, is the 2nd of June at 1 o'clock. Just to make sure you let Stacy know if attending, so that we can properly get the seating and everything. So welcome any and all of you to attend if possible. Understand lives are busy, but great day. So again, graduation ceremony on the 2nd of June at 1.
All right, Amy, nothing? Amy F.?
Yes. So I have an update regarding the district library media specialist. And in order to provide that update, we have to go back to spring of 2022, in which time, through some budget reductions, so you remember we had technology integration specialists at the high school. That individual was also an English teacher. And they were so good that they literally worked themselves out of jobs, right? So our staff became very comfortable with technology integration in the classroom, and the coaches were no longer being accessed. So at that point in time, we eliminated the technology integration coach at the high school, which allowed that individual to take on an additional English class. That then impacted our library media role because that individual was taking on English and the library media specialist role. So because some of that load's instruction went to the individual that was the technology integration coach, we then, in an effort to reduce budget, reduced the shared role to a 0.5 library media specialist. Is this all ringing a bell for those of you that were with me at that time? Okay, so that's the history lesson on that. So at that time, we entered in agreement with the village and the public library to do a shared librarian. So that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years. On April 30th, we received a letter stating that that agreement will not be reinstated. So the public library and the village reached out saying they will not be reinstating that agreement for the 24-25 school year. It was a bit unexpected, which is why you have not heard me speaking about it prior to today. So as a district, we are required by the state of Wisconsin to have a licensed library media specialist on staff. So now begins the work around that. I am not certain about the ability to find a licensed .5, which is why we entered into the agreement. So we are working on that administratively, but I wanted to provide you a heads up to know that we may be coming to you with the need to hire, and that could potentially be a bit of an impact that was not anticipated.
Did the village give a reason for not renewing it?
We received a letter. I can certainly share that with you. It just really talked about our programming and the shared nature of that and the shared nature of the aides within our buildings, which we know, right? Like, that's not new. We use our people across the district in many different roles, because that's what we do. So aside from that, no.
Godspeed. We're gonna find it. Yeah.
All right. Amanda, anything else tonight? Okay. I don't have anything. So policy review and development, second reading of the administrative rule for 345.4, acceleration.
Page 2. Or no, I'm sorry, page 72. There were no real updates aside from the feedback, Steve, that you had given regarding section 1, which the procedures for acceleration was that specific to elementary or general, so we included the word general in there. That was the only update that we had made since the first reading.
Okay.
Any questions or areas to explore? Nope.
All right. And the other one is a second reading of policy 361.1, selection of library instructional materials.
Yeah, that's page 73. So we have not made any changes since the first reading to the policy. Kevin, you had asked about the form that is used, and so we took a glance of that form. It is very outdated, especially, and if you look at the material checkouts that are available, they don't exist, right? They're materials that we don't have anymore. So I did a little research in between to see what other area districts do. They all have a form. And so you will see a draft of the form to update what we have right now. That begins on page 78, and we tried to align it with the policy that's being proposed. So for example, on that first page in the policy, we talk about having proof of residency. So we have an area there where we're requesting address and such, and making the request on behalf of self or an organization. I also thought it would be, I saw this on another districts, and I thought that's a really great idea, to outline essentially the steps from that policy in the form. So it's one more place that an individual might be able to see what process will be followed for a review. So that's what you will see on page 79. Also in the policy, our first step is always an informal resolution, right? So you're going to see that on the bottom of page 79. The first step is a meeting with the principal and the library media specialist, and so we ask for the date of that meeting in an effort to resolve informally. And then it essentially goes into the type of material to be reconsidered, the title, the area, or examining the resource, which section specifically did you review, what brought the resource to your attention. We're asking for a specific objection, so to what in the material do you object? We ask for page numbers. I feel like that's important. And then any additional information that would help the committee to understand and make a decision regarding the reconsideration of the materials referenced.
pages 76 and 77 are the current
Yes,
form.
that's correct.
78 through 81 is the proposed.
Yeah.
Correct, okay.
Mm-hmm. It was so many changes that's why I did a draft.
Yeah.
It gets super confusing when you're trying to see it on the original.
I think the new form is great. I mean, I think it's a good, like, timely update to
Yeah.
getting at what we really need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a little more straightforward.
Yeah. Okay.
I think some of those questions were unnecessary. They're removed now in the new form. So I also scratched my head at the relevance of some of that
Mhm.
information.
Yeah.
But
Tried to
I
make
think
it,
it's,
like
I think
Anna
it's
said, more
right now.
timely. Okay.
We'll say it one more time.
Okay. Thank you.
Communications announcements.
I don't have any except within your packet, I just wanted to bring your attention, Baird put together just some data on since 2000, each month, what is the failure and passage rate, percentage from a standpoint of issuing a debt, non-recurring, recurring. I found it very intriguing information due to the fact a lot of people get caught up on when one should go. I would urge, and I think we've always agreed on that it's not so much about the win as it is more about the need and the solution being right? But timing, I think, supports sometimes even though we had success in last April with the operational, which is great, if information can be done in a timely fashion and there's a need and not being rushed, I think the data does support a lot of times the November non-presidential, presidential it demonstrates from a standpoint of just, the success rate and all that. The other thing it probably would support, which this is purely not in the data, but hypothetical from me, but I'd say you're probably getting the highest turnout always, so you're truly truly finding out whether or not what your community truly wants from that standpoint. But it's always not possible either to align it to November, as we know, because there's things that have to be done and timing of it, right? So you're not gonna rush a solution when you don't feel you know what the solution is yet either. So it's all those balances, but I just found that information kind of interesting by the per month since 2000.
Okay, future items, anybody have anything on the board they'd like to add to future meetings? Okay. Then I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of enhancement supplemental compensation request, administration and supervisory contracts per statute 118-24-6, employee leave of absence request, and request for consideration of an easement with the East Troy Community School District as provided under state statute 19.851C, 19.851E, and 19.851F.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Steve? Adam?
Yes.
Kevin? Anna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We're in closed session.